Hey everyone, I often get a lot of questions about, or people asking me where I did learn my Spanish, and usually the answer is through various means. So because learning a language is not just learning vocabulary, um, there are a lot of steps that go into it, a lot of kind of practice. It's really not a sprint; it's more of a marathon, which is probably something you hear a lot. But but I'm going to go over kind of seven main steps that I've kind of used and use going forward when I am looking to pick up a new language. So that being said, I'm going to start off with step one. So so I'm not going to go super into depth on each of these steps. I'm going to have kind of a video on each one specifically. So be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any of those videos. So now step one is learning the kind of the alphabet slash pronunciation. A lot of times when you're gonna pick up a new language, it's maybe not as important for certain languages that have a lot more symbols than maybe a smaller set of letters like English, Spanish, Korean, German, really most of the European languages and stuff like that have. But a lot of those languages that do have like a smaller alphabet with more or less specific sounds that go to those letters. This is something that it's very important to not necessarily learn what the letters are called, but what sounds they can create and what sounds certain groups of letters can create. This is important because a lot of times people kind of start learning a new language and they'll really just use the sounds that their native language's alphabet creates. So a lot of times when, for example, if you're learning Spanish from English, um, there are a lot of sounds that really people do think when they're initially trying to learn it, they think, oh, I can get away with using the sound that my language creates, and a lot of times, especially with your if you're an English speaking speaker, the R in the English language is completely different from the R sound in almost every other language. And there are also numerous other examples. But this little learning these kind of right off the bat is very good, so that when you are then more to a more advanced stage, you're not kind of going back and all retroactively trying to go back and fix all the pronunciation errors that you're making right now after learning all this stuff, and then trying to retroactively and then bring all of that forward into your current more advanced stage. So that kind of leads into step two, and step two is to learn um, really basic vocab and more survival phrases or more basic phrases, and this can be helpful because it's really just to get you a feel for certain words, and it kind of brings forward the pronunciation that you learned, and so now it gives you a chance to really work with the pronunciation, the alphabet that you're kind of working on with step one, and and kind of bringing that in forward to step two. And keep in mind that these steps aren't something that where it's you have to do one and then you stop working on one and then you work on the second step, and then once you have that you go on to the next step. It's more kind of you really want to continually practice with them, and kind of blend the steps together in a way. But this is more, but kind of the steps are more general. You really want to start with one before going on to each other subsequent step. So kind of getting back to the basic vocabulary and phrases. These are kind of words that you'll want to really think of it as kind of if you were thrown into a city or a kind of a native setting, words and phrases that you you really need to be able to kind of survive. So it's kind of like travel travel vocab and travel phrases. And you don't necessarily, it's not something where you're really wanting to focus on the grammar right now. It's focusing on learning what the meaning is, and then focusing on kind of making sure you get that pronunciation right that you kind of worked on that first step. The third step then kind of would be step 3 would be grammar. And this one's going to take longer, and this is probably going to be the least fun part of really learning the language, especially if you are a little older. Grammar is a lot harder for older people, or really someone over the age of 18 to pick up, whereas vocabulary, it's fairly consistent of kind of the amount that you can learn, maybe, which is kind of often why, even for like if you're a native English speaker and you kind of play a word game, a lot of times people that are older will do better, because a lot of times vocabulary is something that actually does expand quite a bit as you age. And so a lot of older people, unless they, of course, fall into a, a mental illness, it's something that really you will see continue to expand over time. So getting back to the grammar, and like I said, it's probably not going to be the most fun part of it, but it's something that really, once you get over this hurdle, it makes everything else that it's more immersion. Really, this is up about as far as you really will get in like a high school class or something like that, and really stopping here doesn't make you really able to speak it with a native speaker really with any fluidity. You'll really just want to start off with kind of present tense stuff and kind of work on a lot of the present sentence structure while you are working on present tense. So you'll want to get a lot of the sentence structure, whether languages, subject, verb, subject, whatever the kind of the sentence structure in general is, questions, things that vary. You'll want to pick up a lot of that with the present tense verbs, and then you'll kind of, after that, you'll move forward to past tense, future tense, conditional, everything else that comes along with the language's grammatical structure. So now we'll move on to step 4. I haven't seen too many people actually really talk about it too much, but it's something that for me has been very beneficial, and this is just thinking in the language. It could be on your walk home from work, from school, class, while you're at the gym, while you're shopping. You can just think about kind of what you need to do in that language. So if you're at the store, maybe think about, oh, that's a flower, and then you could try and think, oh, if it's Spanish, flor. You can kind of get practice without anyone having any idea that you are practicing the language. So you're able to get some practice, and you're able to kind of go through any. It's more like natural situations that you can be at the store and be like, oh, I don't know what this word is, and then you can make a mental note and then look back and kind of look up the word, and then when you get back to that situation again, you can be like, oh, I know what that is now, and you'll have it for when you do get into kind of those situations with maybe a native speaker, and you're like, hey, I need this from the store, and you have it in your mind already. And the fact that no one around you knows that you're really just thinking in another language or practicing this language, it can be good for maybe if your parents or something are like, hey, we need to go visit with one of my coworkers, and we're gonna go to this party or this get together with my coworker, and you're kind of sitting there and they're talking about something that doesn't interest you at all, and you can just sit there and zone everything out and just think of what you want to learn and practice, and it's not just kind of think about what you do need or what this situation. It's also having conversations with yourself it's very beneficial because then you kind of get both sides of a conversation. So you have to think about what you would say in a situation and then what someone else would say. And it could be something, say you just had a conversation with a coworker or a classmate or something about something in your native language. You can almost just go over that entire conversation and think about the conversation in that target language. That's something that then when you do realize you don't know certain words, you can pick up a lot of vocabulary that way because you realize you don't know it, and then you'll just go back and think through it. And it's something that if you don't have a lot of time, and you're kind of busy often, you can kind of go and just do this while you're doing things. So this kind of leads us to step 5. Step 5 is kind of just really media consumption. So this would be really music, listening to music, and like watching TV in your target language. They really are kind of more or less separate, but they kind of all fall into the media absorption. But they do kind of target different senses, or you're going to pick up different things from music that you're going to pick up from watching a TV series or a movie or something in your target language. So music, you're going to pick up a lot more listening to sounds, how people pronounce things in that language, and then TV is going to be a lot more picking up cues from what's going on in the show or the movie that allow you to kind of pick up some more vocabs and see kind of how they structure their sentences as well, because that's going to be more of a natural rhythm to the speech that music really won't have while you're listening to it. That leads us then to step number 6. So for step number 6, it's going to be find a texting buddy. This is pretty easy to do. There are lots of applications that you can do this for, especially if people are in the target language has a lot of people in the same kind of more or less time, like 3 or 4 hour time zones. As long as there's not too much of a difference. It's kind of harder if you're in the USA or the Americas and you want to talk to someone from Europe or Asia or Africa or something, and you're kind of almost on 2 completely different days, like they're going to sleep when you're waking up type of thing. But there are plenty of applications out there to meet people and text with them, and this is very beneficial because you'll get a lot of practice speaking with a native speaker without necessarily the pressure of having to respond right away and to be perfect and work on completely on pronunciation. It's more you can kind of get kind of a chance to read things and translate it, and then look up what you want to say, and then maybe get more of an advanced level of vocabulary from picking up some of those words that you otherwise, if you heard them from someone, you might just forget, especially if you're a visual learner, which is kind of something that I am, very visual in terms of learning. So if someone just says something to me, I don't often pick up the new word, whereas if I see it, it really helps me. And then this leads us to our 7th and final step, which is to find a personal friend. So this would be looking for someone in your city that maybe speaks a language that you have lots in common with, that you can just go do things with. A lot of times you really don't want them to be that great in your native language, so that you have a reason to really just speak in that target language that you're going for. Another thing is you could just move to the country or city where your target language is most spoken, and that gives you more of an opportunity to actually find a friend that you can do a lot of things with, practice your conversation skills and things like that. And you don't necessarily have to. Again, there are applications where you can kind of do semi kind of have a video conversation, video chat with people, and that also works very similarly, and is can almost be equivalent to going and doing things. So those were the 7 steps to learning a language. Of course, there are some things that obviously I didn't really mention. One of the steps being vocabulary, but that's something that you're consistently going to be learning. Even as a native English speaker, I'm learning new words all the time, and the language constantly evolves. So is constantly evolving. So that's why if you stopped learning new vocab in 20 years, even if you kept all the same vocab kind of in your mind, you still would kind of miss out on uses of certain phrases or changes in meaning of certain words. And so that's something that you're going to continually want to work on. So those are the end of the steps. I'm going to continue. I'm going to go more in depth on those, and then I'm going to start teaching a couple of languages, mainly focusing on Spanish, and then I'm going to maybe do a more Brazilian Portuguese. I haven't practiced it in a while, so I might have to kind of get back into it, but I might, as I maybe try and pick up other languages as well, I might kind of share kind of my experience going through these steps as well, and to give you better advice on learning them, and then also just grammatically giving advice on that. But mainly for now, they're going to be mainly in Spanish because that is my next best language. Thank you for watching. If you're interested in seeing kind of listening more in depth on each of those, because there is a lot to talk about on all of them, subscribe. And then if you're also interested in learning kind of Spanish, I'll do kind of the first 3 steps, and then I'm gonna kind of jump around quite a bit probably and go into different things as they come up, kind of culturally, maybe in specific countries. So if it's Independence Day in one country, I'll maybe talk about some of the customs there, and maybe give some vocab and that's more specific to those countries and some of the Spanish-speaking countries. I do have a lot more experience with more vocab and stuff from, say, modismos or Chilenismos, depending on the country. Do have a lot more in idioms and stuff like that, or just vocab specific to countries, more so in Mexico and Chile and Colombia, Venezuela. So if you are interested in those as well, also leave comments if you do kind of want me to make an extra video kind of on something maybe you're struggling with. Maybe I can jump ahead, and if there is kind of interest in something like that.